So before we learn how to connect better with our prospects by becoming a 4D salesperson, I'd like to welcome you to prospecting, which is the first step of the selling process. Now, the goal of prospecting is to develop a database of likely customers and then systematically communicate with them in the hopes of converting from potential customer to current customer. So unless you live in fantasy land where you're always spoon-fed quality leads, then you're going to need to learn how to prospect. So the first thing you need to know about prospecting is that it sucks. It's hard to do, and if it wasn't, then everybody else would be doing it. So why does it suck? Well, it's easy to become disillusioned with prospecting because at best, we're going to be dealing with people who have a low level of interest in our product or service. And we're bound to hear a lot of "I'm not interested" or "send me a proposal by email." Now, unlike face-to-face leads or inbound telephone leads, which would typically have a higher closing ratio, cold calling on the other hand would be much lower, while cold email outreach would be a fraction of this again. In addition to this, lots of salespeople make the mistake of only turning to prospecting when it's quiet. And the problem with this is that prospecting is not a quick fix. And what we do today will probably not pay off for another 90 days. Now, the goal with prospecting is to keep your pipeline full. And the sooner you consistently start doing it, the luckier you're going to get. Now, the very best salespeople have mastered a balanced approach to prospecting, kind of in the same manner that wealthy people have mastered a balanced approach to their investment portfolios. And balance simply means they get the best return from their prospecting time investment. And there should be a mixture of telephone, in-person, email, social selling, text messaging, referrals, networking, inbound leads, trade show, and cold calling. Now, the relevant distribution of your time investment to each service prospecting base is going to be different because there isn't a one-size-fits-all formula. So, for example, social selling might be a primary driver of consulting business, while inbound marketing might carry a heavier weight with specific software products. Or small companies or startups will need to balance their prospecting to build a database of long-term opportunities, but also they want to look at filling their pipeline with deals right now. So look around you. Find out what the top salespeople in your organization are doing to generate qualified prospects. Then do what they do. Now, you'll find that sales pros who are bringing home the big commission checks know the formula. Now, one of the most essential aspects of effective prospecting is identifying good fit customers for your business. So this means finding leads for prospects who genuinely need your product or service to solve their challenge and pain points. So once you've identified your potential prospects, you need to go where they are. So if they're on LinkedIn, then connect with them on LinkedIn. Now, if they're on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok, then you need to connect with them there as well. Now, there's lots of different ways you can reach out to potential prospects. Of course, you've got cold outreach emails, you've got LinkedIn in-mails, you've got DMs, or you can comment on their post. And even in this modern day of so-called social selling, still one of the most effective ways is good old-fashioned cold calling. The thought of calling prospects cold can cause some salespeople to be filled with fear and anxiety. In fact, a recent study has shown that 48% of business-to-business salespeople are afraid of making cold calls. Now, sadly, salespeople who are afraid of making cold calls have trouble hitting their quotas and are more stressed and are less likely making money compared to their counterparts who don't share the same phobia. In the next section, tips to be effective cold calling, I'm going to cover cold calling in more depth. But before I do that, I'd like to take this opportunity to talk to you about the sales funnel. Now, most sales processes can be viewed as a funnel, which each stage of the funnel taking the buyer one step closer towards the sale. And at the top of the funnel, leads are entered. And leads are generally come from different sources. So you'd have website leads, Google ads, Facebook, face-to-face, etc. And they'd be a mixture of both your inbound and outbound activities. So you'd expect your inbound leads to have a higher level of interest, while outbound leads would require a little bit more effort to move them to the next stage of the funnel. Now, the next stage of the sales funnel is where a portion of your leads will become opportunities after some sort of qualification or vetting. So essentially, an opportunity should look like a good fit for what you're selling. Then the next stage of the funnel, your opportunities are given some sort of sales presentation, and a fraction of these will turn into customers. Now, this is a very simplified example of a funnel, and depending on what you sell, there could be many more steps involved. So for example, a typical SaaS model might consist of leads into opportunities, then demos, trials, and then subscribers. But regardless of how many steps your funnel might take, the big takeaway here is there's no customers, there's no revenue, there's no profit, there's no business without sales. And of course, all sales begin with a lead. So one of my bosses used to say to me when a salesperson was underperforming, they either have a traffic problem or they got a closing problem. So fundamentally, it was all about will or skill. You have the will to generate new leads, and then you have the skill to turn them into sales. So lead generation requires will, and it's so easy to get disillusioned with this activity. And that's because you're going to be dealing with a lot of people who have a low level of interest. So that's why it's so important you adopt a consultative mindset. So what a consultative mindset is where you're not trying to contact a prospect to see if you're trying to sell them something. You're really contacting them to find out if they need your help. Because if you truly believe that the product or service that you offer does really help the end user, make their life easier, more profitable, etc., then taking this step to reach out to them is actually going to be the most natural thing you're ever going to do. Welcome back. The key to be effective at cold calling is your ability to be able to turn a cold call into a conversation. Now, the biggest challenge we face if we come across too scripted or salesy, we're going to run the risk of triggering our prospect's spidey sense. And unfortunately, when this happens, it could be all over before it's even started. So here are some tips going to help you be more effective when it comes to cold calling. So the first one I have for you is scripts. Now, nothing sets our spidey sense off more than an obviously scripted cold call, as they often come across as kind of unnatural and impersonal. However, scripts are essential, especially when you're starting out in sales. So a good compromise here is to keep practicing role-playing until they sound as natural as possible. The next one I have for you is lose the sales voice. Now, another surefire way of triggering our prospect spidey sense is by sounding very salesy when we make our calls. Now, most of us aren't aware that we have a sales voice. So a good tip for you here is take your phone out and record your side of the conversation, and then afterwards listen to it whether to see you need to tone it down or not. Now, the third one I have for you is a thing called pattern interrupt. Now, the good news right now, we should be at a stage where we're sounding less robotic and less salesy, which is definitely going to help get us into conversation. But despite this, we need to learn a technique that's going to allow us to disrupt those "I'm busy" or "send me post my email" that we're likely to get. Now, to do this, we need a pattern interrupt. Now, a pattern interrupt is designed to cause the other person to take a moment and think about the response instead of one of those reflex responses that I just mentioned. Now, to do that, we're going to use a technique called ADA, which is anchor, disrupt, and ask. And it goes something like this. "Hi Mary, it's Paul Fergus from Selling Today. Did I catch you in the middle of something?" She says, "Look Paul, I'm busy." "Mary, that's exactly why I called. I figured you would be. So I just want to find a time that's more convenient for you. How about we get together next Wednesday at 3 p.m? So let's look at this again and see ADA at play. Mary said, "Look Paul, I'm busy," which of course is her reflex response. And then I said, "Mary, that's exactly why I called. And this is kind of my anchor. This enables me to kind of hang in there." And then I said, "I figured you would be. I don't want to find a time that's more convenient for you." So this acknowledges that I know she's busy right now, but it also disrupts the pattern by asking her to think about a more convenient time. Then I quickly added, "How about we get together next Wednesday at 3 p.m. instead? And this is my ask, and this is an assumptive request from me." Welcome back. I'm now going to cover some reflex objections that you're bound to get when you're doing your cold calling activities. And I think we can all agree that most people hate to be sold to, and regardless of how beneficial a proposal might be, a natural reaction from most people is to go into some sort of defensive mode as soon as they detect something salesy is going on. In fact, if you're dealing with somebody who's been around the block a few times, they'll probably have a few ready-made objections designed specifically just to throw you off your game. Now, any good salesperson worth their salt needs to be able to tactically deal with these so we can move past these and into an area where we can explain our value. So here are 4 common reflex objections that you might run into. So the first one is, "Thanks, we have a solution already." Then you can say, "At this point, we aren't suggesting that you change supplier. We'd just like the opportunity to show you how we're different and how we've provided additional value to our customers before in the past." So the next one I have for you is, "I'll get back to you." Sure, let me ask a couple of questions now to better understand how we might help, and then I'll email you more information later on. The good old "not interested." That's understandable. Let me briefly explain that I've done my research, and I'm calling you because we've worked with companies similar to yours in the past, and they have benefited from our solution. If you give me 5 minutes of your time, I'll be able to show you how we did that. And then finally, no budget. That's okay. We don't expect you to buy anything right now. We just like the opportunity to share with you what we're doing to see if it's a value to your company. Welcome back. With scripts and lose a sales voice, the overall lesson there was about those first 7 seconds after the prospect answered the phone. So this can be a make or break moment between you and the prospect, in which your pitch, your tonality and approach must be perfect. Otherwise, there's a big chance you're going to lose them straight away. While with pattern interrupt and reflex objections, this kind of reminds us that nobody likes to be sold to. And it's normal for us to go into some sort of defensive mode as soon as we detect something salesy is going on. So as salespeople, we have to learn how to tactically deal with these objections so we can move past them and into an area where we explain our value. However, I think it's really, really important when it comes to cold calling that you define your objective. So basically, what exactly do you want to get from your cold calling efforts? So this could be you want to arrange a second meeting, book a product demonstration, or understand prospects' needs. So for me, it's all about booking a demonstration. So a common pain in my world is getting new salespeople up and running and performing sooner. So a typical call for me would look like this and say, "Hi John, it's Paul Fergus from Selling Today. Do you have a couple of minutes for me?" So if John said no, then I would just use ADA. And if he said yes, then at least I know I have his attention. So I'd say something to the effect of, John, we offer bespoke sales training that helps in getting new sales hired, ramped up and performing sooner. Now, I'm not saying your current onboarding is not effective, but if you'd like to compare notes and see what you might be doing differently, I'd be more than happy to share this process with you. Would you be more interested in learning more about our onboarding process? So if John said yes, then I'd open up Calendly and I'd set up a time and date for a demo. Now, another important thing is keeping motivated when it comes to cold calling, and this can be a big challenge, it can be. So a couple of little tips here for you is, one is block off a particular part of your day. So what I mean by that, it's very easy to get distracted or give into procrastination when it comes to cold calling. So a simple way to avoid this is to block off a particular part of your day for the sole reason of making cold calls. And this way, come hail, rain or shine, your task will be just to make calls during this allocated time. And the second thing is, do the maths to get to know. So first figure out how many no's it takes before you hear a yes, and then you set your no's as a milestone. So what I mean by that is, if it takes an average, say 15 no's before you get a yes, and let's say you're on call number 10, then you know a yes is just around the corner.
Halt! Who goes there? It is I, Arthur, son of Uther Pendragon from the castle of Camelot, king of the Britons, defeater of the Saxons, sovereign of all England. Pull the other one. I am, and this is my trusty servant Patsy. We have ridden the length and breadth of the land in search of knights who will join me in my court at Camelot. I must speak with your lord and master.
What, ridden on a horse?
Yes.
You're using coconuts.
What?
You've got 2 empty halves of coconut and you're banging them together.
Welcome back. Even King Arthur didn't like gatekeepers. But the reality is we're going to have to deal with them at least 50% of our phone prospecting time. There's just no way to avoid them. Sure, there's some hacks out there we can try and use to get around them, like calling other extension numbers or going around their backs. But if we get caught, we're going to end up looking foolish and we're going to blow any chances we have at doing business with this organization. There's no secret technique that's going to get you past the gatekeeper. However, there are some strategies going to give you an edge with dealing with gatekeepers, and I'm going to share a few with these right now. So the first one is just be likable. This is where you need to project a positive, cheerful, outgoing personality. You want to be polite and respectful. You're guaranteed to fail the gatekeepers if you're pushy, rude, or ill-mannered. Always leave them with a positive impression of you and your company. So the next one is say please twice. So for example, when gatekeepers answer the phone, you might say, "Hi, this is Paul Ferguson from Selling Today. Could you please connect me with Sean Kelly, please?" So another good one is be transparent. Tell the gatekeeper who you are, your full name and the name of your company. Full disclosure makes you sound professional and worthy enough to pass on to the boss. Now, another extremely important one is just try to connect. Gatekeepers are people just like you. And like you, they like people who are interested in them. So if you happen to speak to a particular gatekeeper often, be sure to ask them how they're doing and of course try to connect with them. Another good one is hold the cheese. Never use cheesy schemes or tricks. They're going to harm your credibility and you're going to end up on the gatekeeper's do not talk to list. And then finally, most importantly, I believe, is ask for help. Sometimes an honest and authentic plea for help will get you on the gatekeeper's side. And if you can sprinkle a little sense of humour, this is going to make a big difference as well. Welcome back. When you're cold calling and you hear, "Sorry I can't come to the phone right now, please leave a message after the beep," do you leave a voicemail or not? Now, some salespeople I know won't leave a message, hoping that the person on the other end isn't actually screening their calls. And they will try their luck again by calling back at a more opportune time. While others I know will leave a well thought out voicemail that is designed to give them the highest probability of getting a call back. Now, I don't want to sound cynical, but I think we've all been there. Our phone buzzes with an incoming call, and we reach over to pick it up, and then we see it's a number we don't recognise, so we send it to voicemail. It's nothing personal. We just don't want to take the chance that it's somebody trying to sell us something or some unexpected situation. And it's for this reason I believe going with option 2, leaving a well thought out voicemail, serves a better purpose overall. So here are some elements of a well thought out voicemail. So the first one is identify yourself. Say who you are and the company you work for up front. This is going to make you sound a lot more professional. So the next one I have is say your company information up front and then say it again. So after they hear your name and company, they may not care about the rest of your message because they can infer what it's about based on their situation. The next one I have for you is tell them the reason for your call and what you want. Obviously, transparency is both respectful and professional. And a very important one is a reason to call them back. And this is the key to making this strategy work. So for example, curiosity is a powerful driver of behaviour. So when we have knowledge or insight information, special pricing, or a new and improved product, or some sort of solution to a problem, you create a motivating force that will compel the prospect to give you a call back. And then finally, repeat your name and say your number twice. Now let's hear a message in full.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
Hi Rick, this is Paul Ferguson from Selling Today. My phone number is 087 092 7269. That's 087 092 7269. The reason why I'm calling is you downloaded our white paper on cold calling, and I wanted to learn more about your situation and what triggered you to seek out this information. I also have some additional resources on voicemail messages and phone prospecting that I believe that might be beneficial to you as well. Let's get together this week. Call me back on 087 092 7269. That's 087 092 7269.
Welcome back. Although tips like asking for help and being transparent will help you in getting on a gatekeeper's side, unfortunately a lot of the calls answered by them will still end up on leave your name and telephone number and I'll pass on the details to them. And there's two hopes of them probably getting back to you from there. So with that in mind, there are a couple of other strategies you can use to get around gatekeepers altogether. But for these to work, they have to become your standard procedure. Because you don't ever want to be seen as going around a gatekeeper's back, because you'll end up on their do not talk to list. So the first one is the automated phone tree. So simply try traversing the gatekeeper altogether by using the automated phone tree. So for example, a lot of organizations only have certain departments that are watched over by gatekeepers. So let's just say you want to speak to Tom Watson, who's in HR, and his department is notoriously covered by gatekeepers. So what you could do is call another department. So for example, you could get on the automated phone tree, ask to be put through to accounts, and when they answer, ask to be put through to Tom in HR. Or better still, ask what his extension number is. Now the second one is call at off hours. So another strategy would be to call either early in the morning or late in the evening, because chances are the gatekeeper would be off duty. And if the person you're looking to speak to, say, is more senior, it wouldn't be uncommon for them to be working longer hours. So this means maybe you should try calling before 8 a.m. in the morning, call during lunch hours, or after 5 p.m. Now I get asked all the time what my best advice when it comes to cold calling, and I always tell them the exact same thing over and over again, and that is to stop cold calling altogether. Now I know what you're thinking, what's he talking about? So I'm not really saying you to stop making prospecting calls, but what I am saying is you stop making those traditional cold calls. Instead, before attempting any calls, try warming up your prospect beforehand through a multi-touch approach. So what this means is by using other outbound methods like email or social media, we could in advance create awareness about what we do, making it more likely that the eventual call that we do make will be ultimately more successful. So for example, you could start connecting with potential clients on LinkedIn, but don't be that guy who immediately messes a new connection with, hey, look at me, I'm so-and-so and this is what I do. The best strategy when it comes to LinkedIn connection is to create your familiarity and add value through your post. At the same time, you could enter a prospect into an email drip campaign. So a best practice with any email drip campaign is to make sure your message focuses on the pain you solve, the value you bring, or how you're different from everybody else. LinkedIn InMail is another effective way of creating awareness through a multi-touch approach. LinkedIn has a huge database of members, and you can directly reach out to them using their InMail feature. Now to use InMail, you need to have a paid LinkedIn premium account, and also keep in mind you only get a limited amount of these per month. Now, video messaging is another great way to build familiarity and awareness because the prospect gets to hear your voice and see your face as well. Now, it's normally good practice to keep your email messages kind of short and sweet. However, the data shows that prospects will engage videos for a longer period of time. So this means that video emails are also a great way to share more information and communicate more complex ideas with. So as it stands right now, not many salespeople have caught on to the trend of using video emails, but for sure this is going to change. So before it becomes the norm and the kind of originality wears out, you should start taking advantage of the novelty right now. Now, a well-crafted voicemail is not only an effective calling card, but it can also be used part of your multi-touch approach as well. So the key with voicemail is when to use it. Because if you deploy it too soon, it's going to be hard to justify calling the person back. But whatever your approach is, you must plan it out completely. And it shouldn't be done in a random manner. It should be planned out with lots of steps because prospects rarely don't respond to us because they don't want or need what we have to offer. In most cases, prospects are extremely busy and have a lot on their plate. So in the end, it's all about getting the appropriate message in front of the right prospect at the right moment. And that's why a multi-touch approach works. Welcome to Prospecting's Helpful Practice Activities. Here you'll find some practice activities that will help you better personalize this sales process. And as always, you'll find a copy of these activities in the Company 4D Selling Sales Book. This activity will help you create the ideal sales scripts that you can use as part of your multi-touch approach. In the Accompany 4D Selling Sales book, you'll find a choice of templates that you can choose from, and for this example, we will use an email template that addresses the pain that we solve. In the subject box of this email, you would insert a pain point that you solve. Then in the next line, you would put the contact's first name. This is followed by the reason for this email is that we help. Then you would add your target buyer type. And this could be tech companies, for example, with the challenges, and you would go ahead and list the 3 pain points that you solve. After this, there's a call to action, and this then requires you to restate your target buyer type and a pain point. So for you to complete this template and make it relevant for what you sell, you would only need to complete the first name, target buyer type, and of course know what pain you solve. So to do this, let's start first of all with what your ideal customer looks like. There's many different things that make up what an ideal customer looks like. So for example, if you're going after a company, you could be looking for a particular size, their revenue, how many employees, the geography, for example, if you work within a certain territory or a country, the industry you're going after, what department it could be. For my example here, we're going to go with a tech startup. Also very important is the role of the person that you're sending this to. So for example, if it was a CEO, they might be interested in growing the business, while a CFO could be more interested about the money that's saved or the efficiency that comes with it. So again, your messaging would be affected by this as well. Now that we have this information, so the only thing left for us to do is to fill in an imaginary bucket with the pain that we solve. So for example, in my world, common pain points for sales companies are, it can be difficult getting salespeople to follow the correct sales process and ask all the right questions. It can take a long time and be difficult to get new salespeople trained and ramped up. The sales staff turnover can be costly, and it would be nice to find ways to decrease this. Now obviously yours is going to be different, but I'll use my pain points to complete the following pain template. So in the subject line, I'll put in getting new salespeople trained up and ramped up sooner. Again, based out of my bucket. Hello, John. The reason for this email is that we help tech startups with the challenge of getting new salespeople trained up and ramped up sooner. We also help with the challenges of sales staff turnover and getting your salespeople to follow the correct sale processes and ask all the right questions. Now, I don't know if you are concerned about any of these areas. That's why I'm reaching out. Are you available for a brief 15 to 20 minute meeting where I can share some examples how we've helped other tech startups getting new salespeople trained and ramped up? Now, the same exercise can be done for the other types of templates that I've provided in the 4D Selling Sales book. So to use the value templates, you would only need to fill the bucket up with the value that you offer. While with the different templates, you need to fill up the bucket with how you're different from everybody else.